Hello and welcome to a very special episode of Dr. Bad Film. I'm James. As always, I'm joined by my two awesome co-hosts, Simon.
How's it going?
And Daniel.
How's it going?
Yeah, but also, we've got a guest. We have Harley Neville with us today, a New Zealand-based producer, actor, and co-founder of Pigville Productions, a New Zealand-based production company. Mate, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Kia ora, everybody. I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here on the Dr. Bad Film podcast. Not sure if I should be offended or not. We'll see.
This week we're having a look at one of Harley's films, one where he's in the leading role, the 2014 comedy horror I Survived a Zombie Holocaust.
Well, it's actually, it says 2014, but it always bothered me because that was when we had our festival release, but actually it was 2015 was when it came out publicly, and so it always kind of bothers me that it says on IMDb 2014 when really I feel like it's 2015. But if anybody out there in internet land wants to edit that, just go right ahead, change that to 2015. I won't mind.
I have your permission.
Do they not allow you to do that? Do IMDb not let you go in
I
to
think
do
I
it?
tried, and I feel like for some reason it wouldn't let me. Maybe it needed some sort of proof or something like that, and basically I gave up. But I do have an IMDb Pro account, which is very handy as a filmmaker. I can definitely recommend getting one because you can put all your stuff, everything you can create, you can put it up on IMDb yourself.
It's like LinkedIn for the film industry.
Yeah, exactly. It's why I look so cool on my IMDb. It's because I did it myself.
You did it yourself.
Yeah.
We need to make our ones out as professional IMDb.
I don't think they let podcasts on IMDb.
We should get some LinkedIn professional podcaster, voiceover actor. Oh man, before we go over the plot for today, are you able to tell us a little bit about production? Like how did this idea come about to do, I don't know, kind of just like this meta take on the zombie genre?
Well, do you mind if I do the plot summary first? Because I feel like we're going to be talking about a bunch of stuff that they won't understand, you see?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, no, go for it.
Cool. So basically, I Survived a Zombie Holocaust follows Wesley Pennington, who is an aspiring, fresh out of film school filmmaker, and that's played by me. That was my role. And he's just got his first job working on a real film set, and it's a B-zombie film called Tonight They Come. But it turns into a sort of a first day from hell when there's a real zombie outbreak in a nearby village and the film set is overrun by actual zombies. And it's sort of a decapitate with care story.
That's a nice way to put it.
It's cool. Yeah, because I think at this time, wasn't it? Like this was roundabout when like the zombie genre, I guess, it'd been a little overdone, and I guess the movie plays on that, doesn't it, quite a bit.
This was like sort of the peak of when like Walking Dead, the TV show, was at its like height, right?
I mean, 2015 is before you got sick of zombie films, before it was an overdone trope. It was sort of like the cool thing.
Sort of. What happened, it's a sad story really, because basically what happened was we wrote this Guy Pigden, the writer-director, wrote this in 2010, and we got the funding at the very end of 2010, November 2010, and we filmed it in April 2011. And back then, zombies were hot shit. And there was, zombies were really on the way up, but World War Z hadn't come out yet. But Walking Dead was around. That song, Every Day I'm Shuffling, ding, 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 ding. Yeah, that was hot on the radio when we were shooting it. And I don't know if you remember the music video for that, but it's basically music zombies. And if you don't stop dancing, they notice and you become infected. That's what the music video is for that. And so everything was zombies at the time, and it was very cool. But then what happened was we went into post-production at the beginning of 2011 when zombies were still hot shit, and then it took 4 years to get through all the post-production and get it all done and get it out. And by 2015, World War Z had come out, and Walking Dead had done a bunch of extra seasons, and everything was everyone was pretty much over zombies by the time it came out. And we also failed to change the name. We probably, when we first created it, we were like, yeah, cool, I Survived a Zombie Holocaust, kind of a working title. But then in 2015, we should have rethought that and probably taken out the Z word in order to kind of focus less on it being a zombie film and more on it being about a film set being overrun by real zombies and kind of, like the horror parody type stuff.
Yeah.
Because the zombies don't show up until quite far into the film.
About halfway.
Yeah, and it's mainly just about,
isn't it? Yeah.
Like you say, like a horrible first day of the character that you were playing. Like, I do feel quite sorry for his character. Like he's trying his best, even though he's thick as fuck. Like it's not very smart.
Incredibly pathetic human being.
a bit socially inept in reading situations.
Yeah, well, a better title might have been Cinema Never Dies. Kind of like that. Cinema Never Dies, because it's set on a film set.
I like that.
But it doesn't say the Z word, but it still lets you know that it's a horror. So that's what I was kind of thinking. But yeah, so by the time we actually released it, sadly, the zombie bubble had somewhat popped, which was a bit of a real bummer for us because, when we created it, zombies were hot.
What were the hold-ups in the production? Like, why did it take so long to go from concept to actual film? Or is that just the normal thing that happens?
It was a low-budget film, so that's part of it, was that it was $250,000. That's how much that's the total budget, which is a lot of money for me, but it's not a lot of money to make a feature-length film, especially one that has quite a lot of ambition, a lot of locations, a lot of cast and crew, and there's some stunts, and there's, visual effects and practical effects and all that type of stuff, and basically it all just kind of adds up. So, we probably didn't set aside enough money for the post-production, plus we ran into a few post-production issues, like for example we lost some of the footage. We lost a full day of footage, which meant we had to go back. Wow. And it was a big day too, of like in a swamp. The swamp, I don't know if you remember the swamp scene. We actually had to do that scene twice, and that's because we did a full day in the swamp, and then somewhere in the transferring process somebody lost that footage, and so we had to claim for insurance and then go back.
Oh my god!
Yeah,
claim for insurance. I suppose
it'd
cost thousands of dollars to shoot for a whole day.
Yes, of course.
Are these like are these teething issues normal, or was that like kind of an exception? Like, I mean, you've made a few films, or you've been involved in the production of a few films now. Is that something that's kind of common, these like teething issues, or is it?
It was definitely our first.
Was that kind
film.
of an anomaly?
It was definitely our first film, so there was plenty of room for us, like making mistakes and learning as we went, and so on. So there's definitely plenty of room for that. Also, the director is a real perfectionist when it comes. Guy Pigden, his name is, and he's the writer director, and he's my best friend, and we've been making movies together for 20 years, and he's a real perfectionist, and so that's a good thing because I want to be proud of what we release every time. I don't want to release a bunch of shit stuff and just every now and then release something good. I want to try and release things that are always, to the as great as they possibly can be, and Guy is a real perfectionist, so that's a good thing. But the flip side of that is, of course, it takes a long time to get a color grade done for very, very little, or visual effects or sound mixing and all that done for very little, because you want the best people to do it, and we know the best people, but we need to work around their schedules. Another issue we had was, this was kind of one of the main problems with the film during the production of the film, was that our practical effects didn't work. We filmed it in Dunedin, and the person in charge of the practical effects was a local guy, and maybe he was a nice guy, and he did absolutely a lot of great stuff, but overall a lot of our practical effects just didn't really work, and so sometimes it was things like squibs, people getting shot and the squib not working, and other times it was this and that, the other thing. And so what often happened was these things ended up taking longer to film than planned, and then also they all had to be fixed in post-production with visual effects that we hadn't really budgeted for or planned for. So we didn't have a workflow for all of these visual effects because it was by and large meant to be done practically. We wanted like practical effects for the most part, and so we that ended up dragging on for a long time, where basically basically we were just waiting on visual effects, and it was our first film, so we didn't know as many people as we do now, and that also kind of slowed it down because we were just working with sort of whoever was keen to work with us, these guys who haven't even released their first feature film, and to do it, for free.
It is really impressive, the effects that come across. Like, considering you only had a $250,000 budget, like we've looked at movies with 5 times that, even more, that have done a way worse job at making a film.
Well, thank you.
I think New Zealand's always had that kind of the number 8 wire sort of attitude. Like, you can just make it work for the cost and it'll better and like get a good result from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. A lot of people did contribute, and a lot of people put in a lot of hard work for a lot of years because, this was a 5-year process in the end, and we were still shooting pickups, 4 years later type thing. Not very long before releasing it, we were still going out and shooting pickups. We'd moved from Dunedin to Auckland, and so it was really a labor of love, and a lot of people. It wouldn't have been possible without a lot of people all putting in all of their, their time and expertise just for the love of it, and as for favors and for the passion of it.
That's really cool.
Wow, it's kind of crazy to think just how long this film took to make. Like, I assume if you were to redo it or whatever for your next films, you would just have such a shorter process because of the people and all the things you found out along the way.
Well, you would think that, right? That the second time you make a feature, it'll be a much quicker, easier affair.
A much cleaner and easier experience.
You can take all the lessons that you learned on the first one, apply them to the second one, bam, you've got a feature film, smash it out in a few months. Easy peasy. Especially if you write the script in such a way as to make it shootable, then even more so, right? So that is actually what we did with our second feature film. So explain who we is. Guy Pigden and I have been best friends since we were 13, and when we were 16 we made our first feature film. Our first short film. And since then we've just been making heaps of stuff throughout the last all this time, and I Survived a Zombie Holocaust was our first one together, and then our second one, Older, we said we're going to apply all of those tips and tricks and do a quick easy 12-month one, and then that ended up taking 7 years.
Jesus.
Wow.
Whew.
Yeah, so we started that in 2013 and we released it in 2020, and it was a story about sort of a love triangle, and it's basically similar to stories like Before Sunset or After Sunset and After Sunrise. Right. Those, I don't know if you've seen those films. They're rom-coms, and they're basically pretty people in beautiful places having interesting conversations. And so we sort of said, let's do something like that this time. No exploding heads, no zombies, no shutting down main streets, no nothing like that. We just
it's a bit of a pivot from your last movie.
Yeah, for sure. But the idea was to make it shootable, right, and to get it out not in 5 years.
Yeah,
and then that one ended up taking 7 years.
Wow.
Was everything shot in a certain amount of time, and there were just other things that dragged the process along, or was that, I don't know, was it just the shooting eventually ended up taking years, and it was just...
No, it's never the never the shooting. The shooting's the fun, easy part usually. So in this case, in both films we had principal photography, which was a few weeks. I think Zombie Holocaust was 5 weeks, and Older was 3 weeks, I think. So, and then afterwards. It's all the post-production when you're asking people to work for free, and so that's kind of the problem. So our second feature film, Older, the budget, we shot that for $7,000. That's ridiculously low. That's a micro budget.
That's incredibly
and
cheap.
that's 7,000 New Zealand dollars we're talking about here, obviously. So yeah, it was very, very cheap. But again, what it meant was there was no actual money for post-production. So we went out and we shot this beautiful thing with these amazing, talented people who were all working for peanuts and using their, we were using good quality gear and all that type of thing that we had managed to get for favors pretty much. But yeah, then you go into post-production and it's like, well, that's different. Nobody wants to sit there and edit your film for ages and ages. So what ended up happening was Guy did a lot of the editing himself. And then there's there's visual effects. We also lost a card one day. We physically lost, after a big day, one of our biggest shoot days.
Like an SD card.
Yeah, with the audio. We physically lost an audio card. And so that kind of meant that entire day, which was a really big scene, needed to be ADR. It all needed to be ADR. And so that, again, is one of those things where it's like, well, you want it to be good.
You need a recording studio.
Yeah, exactly. You need a professional to do it if you want it to look and sound cinematic and, really work. And so we had to spend ages, getting that done and, editing it around work and around, other, real life stuff that you have to get done. And so it just sort of drags on. And then we ended up also doing some rewrites during the edit and changing a few things, which involved us having to go back and shoot entirely new scenes, in some cases quite big scenes. And so, yeah, it just sort of drags on when you're doing it for literally free.
Sure, I can imagine.
Were you satisfied with the final outcome when it came out? Like, were you like, this is perfection, or is there still parts where you look back on after spending that long that you'd like, I wish this went different?
On both films, I think there are things that could always be better, but that's the way it is. They say a film is never finished, it's abandoned. That I think is true, because there are things that I would like to go back and change about I Survived a Zombie Holocaust in particular, because I feel like it's got so much great potential, and it just needs a bit more tweaking in the edit and a little bit of fiddling around to kind of change a few things. And actually we can make, I like it, but I think we can make it even better and fix a few things.
Could you give us a specific moment in Zombie Holocaust that you'd want to change?
I just think maybe, for example, you could get to the zombies a little bit quicker. Maybe you can, sort of add a little more, tighten up a few more things, maybe tweak it, a few more jokes that don't work, take them out, or maybe put in other bits and pieces, because there's entire scenes that we didn't use, and so you could go back and do all of that. And in fact, we are actually kind of hoping to, because we get the rights back from the sales agent next year.
Ooh. Exciting.
Director's cut.
Yeah, there is kind of already a director's cut, because there was a bit of a mistake in the sort of distribution deal, I guess, where basically the two versions of the film ended up going out into the world. There's an American and international version, which is 6 minutes longer, and then there's a New Zealand and Australian version, which is 6 minutes shorter. Now, the version I sent you guys is the director's cut. So there's another version out there which is even longer, but it takes longer to get to the zombies, and some of the jokes don't work. Plus, we had where there are some jokes that we took out and that sort of thing that we replaced in the new version. So yeah, there's already kind of two versions out there, but we get the rights back next year, and I think the idea would be to recut, do a director's cut and then release it via our sales agent that we have for our other two films, which are Older and Immy the Vegan, our third film. They're both with our sales agent, who are called Indie Rights. And I don't know if you guys care very much about the film distribution world, but they've been very good to us, and so we're quite happy with them. So we'd try and take it off our current sales agent with Zombie Holocaust and get it onto our new sales agent, as well as reserve the right to kind of sell it ourselves on Vimeo and stuff like that.
That all sounds pretty cool.
I do look forward to the director's cut. I imagine there's a lot of things that have changed in post-production since, I guess, like when you started, like in 2011. That's like 10 years ago now. Even if I guess Guy wants to do a lot of stuff himself, it'll be, I imagine, just considerably easier with the advances and stuff like the Adobe suite.
Yeah, home editing's got so much easier in the last 10 years.
Yes, I would say so, yeah. And we've also, like I said, we've done 2 more feature films since then as well. So hopefully we have more people that would be willing to work with us. We'd be funding it ourselves, though. That's the thing. Any re-edit we do, any new post-production that needs to be done, we'd be funding that ourselves. And that's how we often do it. We just fund it literally from our own pocket, and maybe a little bit of crowdfunding. But yeah, so we'd redo this edit, but I'm pretty sure this time we would have enough favors that we could call in, where we'd get some professionals to work for us and maybe help us do this new edit.
You definitely have the Dr. Bad film listeners behind you on the backing of remaking another movie like this.
Oh, that's good to hear. I certainly hope so, because that is, of course, one of the big problems with filmmaking, is finding the eyeballs to watch it and the funding to make it. And interestingly, nowadays that's kind of the same thing, because currently eyeballs are currency. So if you put films out and people watch it, you can hopefully afford to make your next one and your next one. So it's quite great, because it means that people out there listening can support us financially without actually giving us any money, because all they have to do is go and watch our videos on YouTube, or go and watch our films. There's a website called Tubi, which is Tubi, and it's a newish platform, and basically it's absolutely free feature films, and there's lots of feature films on there, including 2 of our ones, Older and Immy the Vegan. And what's great about it is people watch them and we still get paid even though they're watching for free. And it's to do with ad revenue. It's kind of like, I think it's got kind of a YouTube-ish type model.
I guess that gets probably a lot easier these days as well with the internet, because New Zealand film doesn't have a broad reach historically.
No.
I can see that changing.
Hey, I hope you don't mind me asking, but what is the revenue from that like? I assume it's not enough for each of you guys to have a livable income from it, but at the same time, I assume it's more than, say, $5 a week.
Well, so with I Survived a Zombie Holocaust, we signed a not great deal, which is why we're excited to get it back next year. And it was one of those sort of tragic stories, really, where the inexperienced filmmakers with their first film signed a shitty deal with a big LA.
Man, it kind of fits the theme of the actual film itself.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah, of the film. Yeah, so we sort of signed quite a shitty deal, and so basically we got a flat fee at the beginning. So if you go and watch I Survived a Zombie Holocaust now, that doesn't really make any difference to me, to my bank balance. I don't get anything. So basically we signed a deal. One of the big problems with a lot of the deals you sign with sales agents is you've got to be careful because they say things like, that they'll promote it for you. And that's what you want, right? You want a sales agent. That's literally the job. The job of the sales agent is to go out and sell it to people and to promote it. And then we all get a cut of the money, right? But what they do is they inflate their costs, their expenses, so that, they go, all right, cool, we'll make you a trailer. And you go, all right, mate, go make the trailer. That's part of your job. And then the bill for the trailer is, say, $5,000. But they don't charge you $5,000. They say, we'll just take that out the other end, And then so they take their $5,000 back before you see a cent. As an example, we refused to do that. We cut our own trailer because we were not happy with that. But there's a bunch of kind of creative accounting like that sort of means that the goalposts are always moving because they've got to cover their costs up to a certain amount, whatever it might be. And once they've recovered their costs, because they're not truly costs, there are things like them getting their in-house editor to cut a trailer, which takes one day, and they charge $5,000 for it. Because they're not truly costs, they're really just making a lot of money. And so say they've got a $50,000, they want $50,000 worth of expenses for marketing and that type of thing. You kind of go, well, $50,000 doesn't sound that much, in terms of marketing a film. So sure, all right. But then once it makes $50,000, they put that $50,000 mostly in their pocket, and then they don't give a shit about marketing the film anymore because they
got their money back.
Yeah, and they don't want to share their money, and they didn't. It's more than their money back. And so basically we got a really shitty deal. So it was available on all these really huge channels in America like Showtime and AT&T and PlayStation and Xbox and MGO and iTunes and Amazon Prime and all of these places. And we basically got one flat fee at the very beginning, which had to be split up amongst all the cast and crew and all the other people. And so basically, I got paid one check for I Survived. Aside from my fee, which I got a daily fee for the actual shoot, which was a very low fee because the budget was not very high. We got paid everybody on set got $120 per day. This was back in 2011, but still, it was even back then a very, very low fee for a lead actor in a feature film.
It would have been below minimum wage at the time. I imagine minimum wage back then was still like $12, $13.
Yeah.
It's rough for like a whole day on set.
Yeah. And then so what happened was I got one check for about $420 a couple of years later, and that's it. That's literally all the money I've received from I Survived a Zombie Holocaust. And I do own a percentage of the film. And then with Older, we've made more money because we didn't sign that shitty deal and we went with indie rights. And indie rights is basically a, what do they call it? Can't remember the word, but basically they take your film and put it up on various pay platforms, but they don't charge you anything. They just take a permanent cut. So, for example, they will get it up on Amazon Prime and they'll take 20%. And they don't care if it gets views or not.
Oh, so they're taking a cut per stream.
Yes.
That's better. It's because their incentive is split over the entire time
exactly
of your film's there. Yeah.
So that's the one. They want us to make money forever. They want our film to be making money in 10 years because they are still getting 20%. So it's still good for them. And so that's good for us too because we want to be making money in 10 years from the film as well. Yeah. So be careful which one you sign with out there if there's any filmmakers. But I can recommend, my indie rights experience has been pretty good for independent films because, they just put it up on a bunch of different platforms and you just promote it or you don't. It's up to you. There's no marketing fees and then they just take 20%.
Are you not allowed to do that deal with I Survived a Zombie Apocalypse? Are you not allowed to upload that onto your indie?
Well, he doesn't own it, so I guess they can't. Well, he doesn't own it. He doesn't have the rights to it at the moment.
So everyone listening should wait until next year to go watch this movie.
basically.
Yeah,
but
we'll set a reminder, and in 1 year we'll tell everyone to go check it out.
Yeah, sounds good.
Well, then it'll be thousands and thousands of people. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the good news is though, if anybody out there did decide they wanted to watch it and wanted us to get the money, they can always go to our Patreon. We go patreon.com/Pigville and which is Pigville, because his name is Guy Pigden and my name's Harley Neville. Pigden, Neville, Pigville. Came up with it in high school. And so patreon.com/Pigville, and people can give us $1 a month, and that really helps because it pays for things like our web podcast hosting fees and Facebook promoting posts and that type of stuff. So it's really helpful.
Do you have a copy of the film on there that they can watch yet? Next year.
You could do it. You could do a Neil Breen and send them out like DVD copies. Yourself.
Yeah. Well, we can absolutely organise that next year. Next year we can be like, hey guys, watch the film directly from us on Patreon. As long as our indie rights deal would allow it. That's the thing. We would need to still negotiate with indie rights to be able to sell the film ourselves directly on Vimeo and in other places. So there's still some. We wouldn't have it absolutely to ourselves unless we chose not to put it on indie rights, which would mean we might have trouble getting it on Amazon Prime and Tubi and all of these other places. Maybe.
Tubi does a lot of horror. They'd be pretty keen for it, wouldn't they?
Yeah, no, I think they would absolutely be keen. I think we wouldn't have trouble getting it on unless, of course, our current sales agent has put it up there already or puts it up before the end of the contract. So if they go away and sign a big contract with them, then maybe we'll end up basically having this film, then we can't put it anywhere because our current sales agent has already sold it to a bunch of people for X amount of years. So we're kind of waiting to see. Yeah. Well, I mean, they're dicks. They're notorious dicks.
That's pretty.
Sales
dickish.
agents are. I mean, it's a ruthless industry, and it's a business, and they don't. They're there to make money. They're not there to make art.
Yeah.
And so you've got to be careful who you work with.
Yeah, I can definitely imagine, like, with a lot of money, like, I mean, a film budget can be huge, can't it? There'll be a lot of like predatory behavior, I guess, from a lot of people involved, and yeah. I guess that's kind of just what to expect. Well, somewhat to expect. All right, we'll have a quick chat about some of our favorite parts of the film. But for me personally, I really like. We were talking about this before, and like the guys were giving me shit. But I really liked the door creaking gag you guys did when he walks in on the sex scene that's being shot, and then also when you repeat the gag later as well when you go into the farmhouse.
Good callback.
And trying to be quiet.
Sorry, the hinge.
It just kind of like
Fantastic.
gave me like, I don't know, kind of spoofy Family Guy sort of vibes. That kind of gag that just like goes and it's uncomfortable, but it's like you're just smiling through it as well.
Head in your hands. Just God.
See, in movies, I have a hard time with uncomfortableness. Like watching it on screen, I'm just sitting there going. I mean, like
You
it
feel
definitely.
that secondhand embarrassment.
Yeah, I'm just like hiding my head under. I mean, it definitely. You did a good job at doing that. But
the bonus scene was definitely one of those for me too. It was, oh no,
Yeah.
this is one of the most uncomfortable things I've ever seen.
So the bonus scene.
The bonus scene.
So Wesley gets a boner when he's trying to is it frame a scene?
Sorry, the scene.
Is that something
It's
that
just a
happens? Like
semi.
you get extras
It's
to
just a
go
semi.
and set a scene?
Yeah, well, I mean, you wouldn't typically get like the runner and the caterer to stand in, and you normally, I guess, on a decent sized budget, you would have actual stand-ins that you pay, and otherwise, yeah, maybe you'd have your friends and the caterer and the runner, and you just put them in there. I guess that could happen, but I mean,
you don't normally get them to take off all their clothes.
No, in a real film, you wouldn't expect them to take off their clothes, even if it was, setting up for a nude scene, So it's basically the gag is that the main actors need to go away to their trailers, and the lighting needs to be set up. So in the meantime, they get my character and the caterer, who he has a crush on, to be stand-ins for the scene for the lighting. But of course, they're naked and they're lying around on each other, and he becomes aroused.
Is that a thing? So he becomes aroused, and it's like a big deal. People start like looking at him and go, "Oh, blah, blah." But surely in a sex scene, it's a normal thing to happen. Like, is that actually like if someone's aroused during a sex scene, is it frowned upon? Does it actually
is it a faux pas in the movie industry to get an erection during a sex scene?
I think it was Jack Nicholson who said before a sex scene, it might not have been him, so don't quote me, but I think he said to his co-star, he said, "Hey, listen, we're about to do this sexy scene. Look, don't be offended if I do, and don't be offended if I don't."
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess at the end of the day, it's biology, but you can be professional about it. But I mean, obviously, it could happen. I feel like it could happen. I've done quite a few kissing scenes, and I'll keep it professional, but I am still a human, and I have a biological response when I'm kissing, beautiful women. So of course, it can happen. But that scene was very funny. It's it's a nude scene, and you see me full frontal nude, apart from wearing what's known as a cock sock, which is a special sock that they put over your genitals to preserve your modesty. And
is that another made-up thing, or
it's almost like more undignified than just being nude?
Yeah, in a way. I don't know. I'd probably still take the cock sock if I had a choice.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about this film, something you should keep in mind about this film, was that it was shot in a Dunedin winter.
Okay. So say no more.
It's freezing cold.
It's not doing anyone any favours.
Well, it's freezing cold. I mean, Dunedin, for our international listeners, is at the bottom of the world. The bottom of the South Island of New Zealand. You can't really get too much closer to Antarctica. There's a few cities between us and Antarctica, but not that many. It's a cold place, especially in winter. And so we had films. We were filming overnights. We were filming in a swamp, and then of course there was this nude scene, which was filmed in a gigantic barn, and it was sort of this big, cavernous, drafty barn, and I would have a blanket on between takes. But
it was fucking cold.
That only does so much, and we had a gas heater, which was, cranking heat out, which was great, but we couldn't use it during takes because it was so noisy.
Oh, yeah. Just pick up all that background noises.
Yeah. And then when you're standing next to it, you start getting kind of a heat rash, and the last thing you want is to be covered in kind of a heat rash for your nude scene. So you sort of got to stay away from it anyway. But yeah, I thought that this was going to be sort of a special sock, like I was like, it's this cock sock. Where do you get a cock sock from? It must be a special sock, right? Something special, but a magical contraption that would protect my modesty, that the makeup people would provide for me, or something like that, or the costume people. But due to the budgetary restrictions, it turned out that none of those things were available. So I had to take my sock off my foot,
your own sock,
and put it on my dick, and then fasten it there with the makeup girl's hair tie.
Yeah, I was going to say hair tie would be a good choice.
She wanted hair tie back afterwards?
No, she didn't want it back afterwards. And I mean, it all sounds very funny, but I actually caught a really bad case of athlete's penis. All of this was after Mike Edward, my co-star, who plays the big, muscly, handsome, hunk. He had just done his nude scene on the same day. We're filming in the same location, so we filmed all of the scenes in that room, in one, or in a few days. And he, Mike Edward, is this, this chiseled, beautiful man with an exceptional body. He's tall and he's got abs and he's tan.
I was surprised how buff he was when he took his shirt off. I was like, damn, that dude is actually fucking shredded.
Yeah, well, he's from Spartacus. He's one of the actors from Spartacus, Ash vs. Evil Dead, and stuff like that. And so he is actually that jacked. And so basically, the cast and crew are all there. Here's this guy, and he's wearing his cock sock. And I tell you what, my cock sock was an ankle sock. His cock sock was a rugby sock. And so I've got to step in there after this guy, standing in literally the same place as him. It was basically just like the movie. It was exactly like the movie.
Just like the movie, yeah.
Easy to get in the role then, I guess.
Yes.
Oh, that's hilarious.
I think for I wouldn't say necessarily favorite scene, more of like a concept, but I really enjoyed that a lot of because you have these kind of like big personalities. A lot of the cast is kind of they're playing up this kind of cliche. You've got the the explosives special effects guy who's just kind of this gun nut and wants to be this kind of like military cosplay hero. You've got the buff guy who's full of himself, and then a lot of these characters ends up with deaths that feel relevant to the foils of that character. Especially, particularly, I want to call out the military cosplayer special effects guy, just because he gets to the end of that scene and has to just shoot himself in the head. Can't control the gun. I really enjoyed that. It was a good clever spin, I thought.
Well, that's actually what that brings me to my favourite scene actually, which was so after the egg beater scene, my character alongside my co-star Jocelyn Christian, who played Susan Ford, and we sort of run through a horde of zombies and we're trying to escape, and then out of nowhere comes our backup. There's a truck, a lighting truck, and the back opens up, and Randy, this American character you were just talking about, this explosives expert type gung-ho character, gets out his gun and starts blowing away all of these zombies. But of course, he's actually just blowing away the zombie extras. He's just murdering all of these extras who are trying to escape.
They're all yelling out to him going, no, help me, help me.
Yeah. help me. And he pulls out a big knife and stabs them with it. Cuts their throat.
Does he actually kill any real zombies in the movie? Because I think even in his death scene, he kind of misses all of his shots and then just shoots himself in the head.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So that's one of my favorite scenes, especially because it's in sort of extreme super slow motion. So he's blowing away all these extras and murdering them all in slow motion, which is great. And then he has a great rant in the back of the truck, and we kind of come up with a plan. Well, he comes up with a plan saying that you're never safer than when you've got a loaded gun in the house. America doesn't back down. America makes everybody else back up.
I like that line a lot. That's really good.
And then, of course, he goes straight outside to blow these zombie fucks straight back to hell. And he goes outside and, due to his lack of gun control, blows his own head off.
Which looked really good, by the way.
Thank you. Yes.
It was fantastic.
Tyler Adams was our VFX person who came along and really saved the day for us. And David McLaren, Tyler Adams. I better get the right one. But yes, they really saved us with the visual effects. They did a great job.
The zombie that was half cut in half, and he's sitting there and he's got his entrails hanging out, and then decides to eat part of himself. Like, you're not going to do that, and he's like, oh no,
yeah,
no, you do it.
Yeah, that cracked me up.
Yeah,
it looked really gory. Pretty awesome.
Like
Super
I said, the practical effects guy did do a lot of great stuff, but there was just a few things that ended up taking us chewing up a lot of time for us.
If you're going to make a sequel to I Survived a Zombie Holocaust, what would it be? Can you give me like a pitch?
So, I mean, I guess we've sort of spoken about quite a lot of spoilery stuff here already.
We always spoil the films when we do
The audience knows what they're in for.
It doesn't matter too much. Hopefully people go and watch it anyway.
Yeah, it's definitely still a fun watch.
But I mean, it's all in the title, isn't it? I survived a zombie holocaust because I did survive it. What happens is at the end of the film, I'm not going to tell exactly what happens, but at the end of the film, it's you don't actually know exactly what happens and how my character survives. You don't actually know that entirely. And so I think what we'd do is we'd pick up exactly where we left off. So the character
driving out past all the fields, driving out of the
Yes.
and your getaway scene.
Smoking zombies on the way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, driving along, hitting zombies along the way, and then you'd basically find out what happens to those characters next. And they need to. What it turns out is they need to get themselves out of the South Island, and the entire South Island has been quarantined. And so they're in Dunedin, but they've got to get all the way to the top of the South Island and across the ferry somehow during a zombie outbreak. And it's kind of like, okay, so what did happen next? How did they escape that?
Because it definitely was one of my questions from the end of the film. Like I was like, what? How did you end up here and filming this film at the end? Like it the ending kind of took me by surprise. Like that end part,
Right.
I didn't understand. But I guess
Well, I think it was kind of like it reminded me like it's supposed to be like a Romero thing. I think. Like, correct me if I'm wrong. It's like, you know, when your protagonists escape from the zombie, whether it's in a mall or something, and then they end up on an island, but then the island's also full of zombies. So then, you know, it kind of leaves it at that with the implication that they've been eaten after. But then you like flip that on its head where it's like, oh, this is actually the scene we're doing in my, yeah.
Well, with this one, it's that he survives. He's an aspiring filmmaker, and he doesn't have the life experience that he needs to really become a good storyteller. He wants to be a writer-director, but his stories are derivative, unoriginal, and he needs to have some life experience in order to be able to create better films and be a better writer. And so he has this huge zombie experience, and then he uses that to develop himself as a character and as a writer. And he went away and he writes his feature film, and he finally somehow manages to get it funded, and he makes this feature film called I Survived a Zombie Holocaust, which is about him escaping this zombie holocaust. And so, yeah, it's kind of left up to you to decide whether the entire thing is a film, which it's not, but is a film about his true experience, or not, or if he has escaped and then come back later on to make this film, and we're kind of cutting to some time later. Mm-hmm. But it's basically they survive, and then he goes and finds somehow funding to make his feature film, which is even harder than surviving a zombie holocaust.
I was going to give you a movie pitch for the sequel, but I think yours was considerably better. So
Okay, no worries. I'm standing by. I'm ready. I'll write. But I've just got to warn you. If there's anything good in there, I might steal it and
there's
use
no
it.
chance of that.
I'm going to tell you now. I'm calling indie rights as soon as this podcast is over. So I think like expand on that meta aspect, and then so for the start of the second film, it is Harley Neville attending a screening of I Survived a Zombie Holocaust sometime in the future. Mm-hmm. Throw some old man makeup on you.
You won't need to, mate. It's been 10 years and I've aged horribly.
And so it's like one of these cult movie screenings. So you get up at the end, you answer some questions of the audience. You go outside, and there is a mysterious figure. He has an idea to direct and produce and fund the sequel to I Survived a Zombie Holocaust. But it turns out that the sequel is essentially going to be a zombie snuff film, and then that's like that's the essential premise of it. And then you get enough funding, and you get like Tommy Wiseau to be the director, or like the mysterious director. Or you get Nicolas Cage. Like, I think, go big on the Cage.
He seems pretty cheap these days.
That's pretty good.
It's an idea.
No, it is. It is a pretty good idea, and it's actually so good that it's actually in our list of potential ideas, because there is this kind of idea that maybe people are using the South Island to kind of set reality shows and do other things like that, because it's overrun by zombies, and they're kind of using the South Island, illegally to create kind of zombie things and do zombie stuff.
Like a Truman Show, Hunger Games sort of thing.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, that type of thing. So potentially Wesley escapes and then there's a bit of a conspiracy, and people try to kind of suppress his story, and they they don't believe him, and they make him out to be a quack, a crank, and that type of thing. But sort of eventually, so he escapes, he overcomes this, and he reveals the this big kind of conspiracy as well, and these people trying to do this Truman Show type thing in the South Island and stuff like that, and then makes his movie. But who knows? It's not written, but it's on the cards.
Yeah.
It's similar to an idea that we had.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. What is Pigville up to next? What is the next project?
So we've got a couple of things in post production. We're a bit all over the place. Like we're all sort of all over the show in the sense that we just create. We're not necessarily always creating horror or always creating comedy. We do have, a few horrors, and we do have a few comedies, and we've also got a drama romance, and we've got a musical comedy. And so we're a little bit all over the show in that we create whatever we want to, although a lot of the time it's based on what we can actually practically shoot, with the resources that we have, and also with, the opportunities that come to us, because it's all about kind of seizing the opportunities that come to you. And so we've got a few things which when we do our podcast, right, the Guy and Harley podcast, it's I'll plug that at the end.
Also, we'll chuck a link for that in the description, listeners, if you want to go check that out.
Yeah, that'd be great. And so that keeps us, like we do that once a week. That keeps us active. But we also have a documentary in post-production, which has been shot, and it's very nearing completion and will be out this year. And
Cool.
It's called Glimpses, and it's a medical documentary, which is, really left field. It's really coming out of nowhere, but it's a medical documentary about multiple system atrophy, which is also known as MSA, which is an aggressive neurological disease that basically takes away. It leaves your mind okay. Your mind is fine, but it slowly shuts down one part of your body at a time. And so eventually, you start off not being able to move your little finger, but eventually you can't move anything, and your brain is fine in there. And so this thing has been shot. It follows a man in his last sort of few weeks of life, basically, and so that's very nearing completion, and so that will be out soon. We've also got a short film called Stay at Home, which was shot during lockdown last year, which is finally going to come out sometime soon. It's currently being sent to festivals, and so hopefully that will come out and then come out on YouTube. Then there's another feature film idea we've got called The Family, which is a sequel to our short film No Caller ID.
Yeah. I enjoyed that short a lot.
Yeah, I did too.
Well, if anybody out there in Listenerland wants to watch it, they can find it on YouTube by searching No Caller ID Pigville. Pigville is the key word, really. So No Caller ID Pigville, and you can go check that out. It's 8 to 9 minutes long, and it's a horror that we shot, and that's kind of got an interesting story in itself, because basically we shot that meant to be kind of a bad film because it's a film within a film. It's actually within our film Older. The protagonist is a filmmaker, and he makes a film which is commercially successful but critically panned. And at one point in the film Older, we then cut to this kind of film within a film. And so we said, well, we're shooting a film. We've got to shoot this thing anyway. We've got the costumes, we've got the location, we've got the crew, we've got the actors, we've got everything we need. Why not shoot an actual short film? And if it sucks, then it doesn't matter, because it's kind of meant to suck anyway. It just needs to be kind of this cheesy horror. And so we made it, and it turned out great. It's not like a super original story, but it's just executed very well. And so what happened,
It is shot really well. There's a lot of good use of framing in there. Yeah, I really enjoyed that.
Adam St. John was the director of photography of that one. And so basically that ended up having a really long festival run and doing really well, and opened a lot of doors for us. And, we went to LA with it, and I got a job out of it as event manager for Show Me Shorts Film Festival, which is New Zealand's biggest and best short film festival. Our film got into that, and then after that they asked me if I would be interested in working with them, and so it did open up a lot of doors for us, and so we sort of have this idea for a sequel, which is kind of like, well, after the end of the film, what happens next? And so if people want to watch that, though, youtube.com/Pigville, and the number 2 is our YouTube channel. Pigville and the number 2.
Highly recommended.
We'll chuck it down there in the description notes as well. There's a few films on there you guys can check out, and there are trailers as well if you want just a quick look at some of Pigville's feature films.
And then I'm also hoping to do a lot more YouTube content. So if people go there and subscribe, that'd be great, because our YouTube channel is monetized. We're neighbors. Guy and I are neighbors. And we've got a wee studio. And so basically I'm really hoping that we can create a lot more short form content for our YouTube channel as well, in between these big projects, because if it takes 5 years per film, then you don't want to be waiting 5 years between releasing content. You want to also release other things at the same time in between.
It's like you were saying before about how, the current currency is eyes, not necessarily money. So having that kind of content, especially stuff that's more short form, more digestible, is a great way to do that.
And it does really support, because obviously when the feature films finally come out, you've got an audience to promote them to. Plus, if they're giving you $1 a month on Patreon and there's 1,000 of them, or that's $1,000 a month, and then you've got your YouTube ad revenue, and then you've got maybe your merchandising and your affiliate links and your referral links, and you've got all these different ways to kind of monetize it if you're active regularly.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot. Like, it's definitely like one of those things now, isn't it? You can pull from a lot of sources to generate like a decent revenue if you get have your fingers in all the pies. I think as a content creator these days is very important.
Disparate passive revenue streams is what you really want, so they're all these different things, and then maybe one of them by itself only gives you $100 a month, but if you've got 10 of those, well, okay, it's $1,000 a month. That's pretty good. If you're putting that $1,000 towards your other productions, then you can kind of build it and grow it, and it's just a matter of getting the ball rolling.
Harley, mate, where can people find you? You mentioned Pigville YouTube before. Where else are you on? Instagram?
Yeah. So
where can people check you out?
We'll start with the films. The films are I Survived a Zombie Holocaust. It's on Amazon Prime. It's on iTunes. It's on on many other platforms. So go and watch that. Feel free. You can also, if you do watch it and you do enjoy it and you want to financially support us, you can go to patreon.com/Pigville and you can give us $1 a month.
Give them $1, yeah.
Yep. Or you can give us $1 for 1 month and then cancel it. That's fine too. And then there's also youtube.com/Pigville and the number 2. That's our main YouTube channel. Deceptively, that's our main YouTube channel. youtube.com/Pigville and the number 2. There's also the Guy and Harley podcast, which is about love, life, and loss and the pursuit of filmmaking glory. And we've been doing it for 5 years. Our next episode will be this Sunday, hopefully, which will be episode 214 at the time of recording anyway. And so that is, if you like filmmaking podcasts, you're out there, you're currently listening to a New Zealand filmmaking podcast, so I guess you probably do like New Zealand filmmaking podcasts, so go and check out the Guy and Harley podcast. It's comedy, and it's kind of a tragedy, and it's kind of just basically documenting our journey so far, and we do talk filmmaking, but not in-depth filmmaking down in the nitty-gritty. It's also about our lives and kind of the chasing the dream and how it affects us, and events in our lives that are unrelated to filmmaking that inevitably affect our ability to make films. And so yes, the Guy and Harley podcast is on iTunes, Spotify, Libsyn, Twitch and YouTube. We live stream it when we record it, and then we upload the edited audio later. So it's kind of a live show.
You're a brave man for streaming it. We would say something horrific, and we'd be like,
"We're not brave enough for that."
I say
we can't edit this out.
Don't worry. We say horrific things all the time. Fear not. And so the other one that I'd love it if people could check out would be olderfilm.com, www.olderfilm.com. That's our new feature film. It's a drama romance, and there's a free option there. You can watch it on Tubi. If you go to olderfilm.com, you can watch it on Tubi, but it's also on Amazon Prime, and you can also buy it directly from us on Vimeo, which is the best way for us. We get the most money that way. We have a third film which we didn't really talk about, which is Immy the Vegan. IMMI is how you spell Immy, and it's a musical comedy, and it's kind of weird and quirky, and it's on Amazon Prime as well, and Tubi. And so the final thing I would say about that is that if you want to follow me personally, you can. I'm on Instagram and Facebook. Just search for Harley Neville. You can find me there, and I'd love to see you. I'd love to connect with you, and I'm all about collaborating. So yeah, please do feel free to add or follow me on whatever your favorite platform is, basically. But Pigville is the keyword.
Well, we've been Dr. Bad Film. We've had Harley on, and yeah, thanks, audience. We'll catch you next week for hopefully the start of season 2. We're doing Maximum Overdrive.
That's the one.
I don't know if you've.
That's the one.
I don't know if you've heard of that, Harley. It's the only film Stephen King's directed.
Ooh.
But it was in the midst of his cocaine years.
Oh.
It's wild.
Okay.
It's about a murderous truck with the Green Goblin from Spider-Man on the front.
Okay. Interesting. Well, look, I'll tell you what, I'll be tuning in, and I hope the other listeners are as well.
Excellent.
All right, guys. We'll catch you next week.
Hey, see ya.
See ya.
Bye.
Hey, what are you guys still doing here? The podcast is over. Maybe if you want to come hang out, come carry on the conversation, head over to our Discord. You can find a link for that down in the episode description. Anyway, we should be back next week for the start of season 2, and we'll see you then.